You have a beat or a song finished, but you feel that every element is living a life of their own. There's not enough glue in the song. You want to make all the elements blend together like one cohesive whole, so that your production sounds like one song and not many tracks stacked together, living their own separate lives. So in this video, I'm going to break down 5 ways that I go about when I glue a mix together. Let's go. So here's the song with all plugins turned off. It sounds nice in and of itself, but as you probably hear, the elements feel a bit dry and without any relation to each other. So let's solve that right away. So the first thing is bus compression, and you've probably heard about this. In Ableton, there's a dedicated compressor for this. It's called the Glue compressor, emulating the SSL G bus compressor. UAD has one, Waves has one, Slate has some. The one I use now is the SSL Native. I've just bought it. I couldn't bear the pressure. SSL were spamming me with ads for 2 weeks on Instagram, and finally I gave in. But I don't regret. I think it's a good compressor. It's nice looking. And it does what it should. In Logic, we have a similar. It looks like this. The Vintage VCA. The basic principle of bus compression is that you have all your tracks leading into this compressor. So the prominent sounds in the mix will be the ones basically triggering the compressors. For example, kick, bass, and the snare will be the ones triggering the compressor. And whenever a snare hits, everything is being ducked, because a compressor is like an automatic gain knob. So when the snare hits, all the elements in the mix will drop a bit in volume, and that way they will react in the same way. That's the main principle behind mix bus compression, is that everything is bouncing together as one whole. And then you also get the sense of completion. Okay, something like that. You also have a wet dry knob, so you can go really extreme and then you can blend in the dry signal again. There are tons of options on this one. Remember also to use the makeup gain so that the signal before and after compression is more or less the same, so you don't get fooled by the volume, by the loudness. Whenever tweaking a plugin, make sure that you don't get a louder or quieter signal before and after bypassing the plugin. If something sounds louder, it sounds better. You want to hear what it sounds like at the same volume, but with and without the processing. So without, it sounds like this. This was a lot more glued together, quite extreme actually. Many mix engineers advise to only let the needle move a little bit once in a while, but in my opinion, this sounded the best. Okay, maybe I'll back down a little bit. I'll back down a bit. I had it a bit extreme, but I think this is great. Okay, the next thing I want to do is sidechain compression. And to dive deeper into this principle, check out this video where I break down the nuts and bolts of sidechain compression. But let's go. We can start with the bass. Sounds like this. And here we have some sidechain compression going on with the track spacer. And the source is the kick. And I have high passed, but I could have used a regular compressor here actually. I just tend to use the track spacer for this purpose. Doesn't matter that much. Yes, it does. So I've I've low passed. No, yes, I've low passed. I've high cut, low passed. It's the same thing. Down to about 150, 170. So everything below 170, the bass area and the sub frequency area, is being ducked whenever the kick comes to play. And you can listen with it and without. Listen with the kick. Take it out. You hear how muffled the kick is? You hear how the kick disappears when I turn off the sidechain and when I turn it on. You hear how much more punch the kick gets, and this is also a way to glue together the kick and the bass, so feel like they're living in the same space. So whenever the kick hits, the bass have to move a bit, so they're moving together. Here's the bass, here's the kick, boom, boom. Okay, next up we have some more side chaining going on. We have those funk drums. Sounds like this. This is a drum loop. Here we have side chain, this one with the snare. So whenever the snare hits, the drum bus gets a bit muffled. Without. With. In and on itself, it sounds horrible, but when we engage the snares, you can see, without. And with. Same principle here. Here's the drum bus, here's the snare. Whenever the snare hits, the drum bus has to move a bit. Bow, bow, bow. I haven't used the low cut and the high cut simply because it wasn't necessary. I thought I could have taken away some of the low end. Actually, you see also here represented where the snare lives. Whatever is under here is the snare. And I have even more side chaining going on. So this is on the main loop. Sounds like this. Engage. Here's the bass. I've put the bass as an insert here, or the input. So whenever the bass plays, the low end of the loop is being ducked in volume. Here's the instrument, here's the bass. Boom, boom, whenever it hits. So you see how this is interconnected? We start with the kick, then we use the kick and punch the bass, and we take the bass and we punch the instruments, or the loop in this case. And same for the funk drum. Everything is being pushed a bit aside for other elements, and that way you get more breath, more breathing, without using an equalizer to just duck something, because when you duck something with an EQ, you will have it ducked away all the time. You could of course automate that, but that's more tedious. Sidechain compression is a lot easier in that matter. Next up, saturation. It's like a filter. So if you take a filter and you put it on everything, imagine a series of photos that have different colors, and if you make them all black and white, they will look more as a cohesive whole, and that applies to audio as well. So let's engage some saturation, and my favorite saturator is the Decapitator from Soundtoys. I'll use that one. Let's try. It's all about finding the algorithm and the settings that is most pleasable, work in the extreme, and then turn it down later. So here, what I can do is I can turn down the drive, or I can use the wet dry button and do the mix in parallel. Let's see. Of course, gain staging again. saturation, everything will sound a bit louder, even though it's not peaking that much, because it will shave off the peaks. A good example of that is bit crushers, but all types of saturators does basically the same thing. They're clipping the sound slightly or a lot, depending on how much saturation you're going for, or even distortion. Let's listen. Yeah, I think I like it. So you can listen with and without. So first I'll bypass it and listen without. And with. Actually, I think that was a bit too extreme. I'll back that down a bit. I heard that especially the snare got a bit duller. So okay, much better. Okay, so that's saturation, giving all the tracks the same kind of filter, but subtle. Next up, effects, reverb and delay. So what we have going on already here, reverb wise, is the snare reverb. Sounds like this, like so. And in the context of the mix, it's like this. And also we have some delay on the violin. It goes like this. And solo, it sounds like this. We can do other things as well. We can have a basic reverb going on across the whole mix to make a more cohesive whole. In my opinion, on this track, there's no need for it, but for the sake of the tutorial, we'll do it anyways, and you can see the effect. Okay, I'll go to the main loop, and I will engage Ascend, and let me choose the... We can do left and right to give it a more stereo sense. So here we have a Valhalla Vintage Verb. Let's just do this in solo. Nice. And can do it, make it cleaner. Let's listen to them together. We'll turn them down so we can barely hear them. So here we have the drum loop and the main loop having the same reverb. I could apply that, of course, to the violin, to the snare, maybe even the kick. Both of the reverbs are high passed up until I think 600 hertz. You won't get any mud in the low frequencies by doing this. Okay, first listen without. If we had vocals here also, some 1/4 or 1/8 delay that was set at very low volume would also add to this glue. And you could also put the same reverb on some of the vocals to get that sense of you're in the same room, you're in the same space. If you haven't already, check out the Ultimate Guide to Mixing for Producers. The link is in the description, where I give you my 10-step workflow that I use every time I mix a song for clients or friends or whoever, and 15 cheat codes to a better mix. Check that out. The link is in the description. Now, the final thing that I wanted to show you is automation. What I usually automate is the volume fader, an EQ filter, or the panning. So let's take a look. So what is already automated here is a frequency. Here we have an instance of Pro Q3. This is just to give the drop more impact. Essentially, the level goes down, psychoacoustically at least, the level goes down with this filter, and it comes back up in full strength. as you can see here, with this very sharp curve right here. The filter is back in full effect when the drop hits. What I want to do now is just demonstrate how you can use, for example, the panning, like so. Listen. These are small tweaks that creates movement, and whenever stuff moves in the mix, you can also do a contrary move on, for example, the loop here. If I go like this, pick this untouched as well, and I can do the up. Like so. Listen. So when the elements are moving in opposite directions, creating some contrast, some movement, you will also get the sense of a cohesive whole. Imagine there are artists on the scene playing instruments and they are moving around, so you might hear them a bit differently in the stereo spectrum as well. So this is a way to play with the stereo spectrum in order to get more mix glue at the end. So which one of these things are you currently doing in your own mixes, and which of these things do you want to try out next? I would love to know. Hit me up in the comments and let's chat about it. And before you go, I suggest you check out one of these two videos which go deep into mixing and mastering. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I hope I catch you in one of these two. Peace!